Well, this today is the third in a series that I'm doing on the whole idea of creating space. And if you feel that you'd like to catch up on the previous ones, then the blue card in front of you, the blue card's to go on our mailing list if you'd like to do that, but the red card will tell you how to get the previous episodes and link into what's up beforehand. But we do a series here, and over a number of weeks, we just look at a subject. And the subject we're looking at the moment is the whole idea of creating space for others. How do we create space for harmony to come into our lives and into the world? And in the first week, I looked at the idea that the concept of space includes not only shape and volume, and space actually does include time as well, but also space includes a generative and creative quality in that it has an idea that it goes beyond the normal concept of just being a void, the whole idea that nature abhors a vacuum. And space creates the potential for something to happen. There's an idea of the potentiality of space. It is the nothing that contains the possibility of something not yet there. And today I actually read in the Tao Te Ching something which actually just absolutely said that. This is the fourth stanza. The Tao is like a well, used but never used up. It is like the eternal void, filled with infinite possibilities. So there's that idea of potential in space. And if we're looking at creating space for those around us, what we have to do is we have to get out of the way and allow that potential to come through us. And last week we looked at the idea that the act of creating space for others is really an act of love. It's done with no expectation of a return. When we surrender to that divine within us and we create a space for others, love is the character of that space. And this is the first step of creating space for others and the world around us. It's the decision to offer love. And, as in 1 Corinthians, that the character of that is patient, kind, not envying, not boasting, not proud, not rude, not self-seeking, not easily angered, keeping no record of wrongs, not delighting in evil but rejoicing in the truth, always protecting, always trusting, always hoping, always persevering. That's the character of what we're creating when we're creating space. It's the starting point because it's love, because it's not controlling, just giving space. It's then that we're able to use our intuitive response, which is what Mimi was talking about the other day, our intuitive response in creating space to take the next step. Because I think, if we get out of the way, we're then guided by that divine within us as to what to do. In his book, The Heart of Sufism, Hazrat Inayat Khan says, the spirit of guidance is a plant that grows and blossoms when it meets with response and care. And when it's watered by the rainfall of divine inspiration, it blooms in the light of the divine sun. The spirit of guidance is the light of God, which may be likened to a lantern that the farmer carries when walking on the farm in the darkness of night. It's like a searchlight which shows up any object which is thrown. And so when the light of the spirit of guidance is thrown upon any aspect of life, man receives a keen insight into it. In the spirit of guidance, one finds the living God active in the heart of every person. One who depends on the spirit of guidance to direct his or her life is guided rightly. We always have a counsel within. And that's the next step, I think, when we take in creating space. We start, first of all, with the intention to create space to bring harmony in our lives. And I think that's important to say. You have to have that intention to begin with. You begin by thinking, well, I do want to make a difference in the lives of those around us. It's the decision to make a difference, the decision to make a contribution. We have to make that consciously. And we do that in the realizations that our lives matter and that we're only here for a short time. And in that short time, we want to make a contribution. We don't have to look for where to make a contribution, to cast around thinking, where am I going to place my infinite, wonderful wisdom and love now in order to make things blossom? Let me choose where I'm going to bestow my... One doesn't have to do that. We don't have to bless a particular area with the benefit of our own goodness, because the areas that we can make a difference to in our lives come right to us, in front of us every day. Those are the areas that we have. Our family, our friends, our community, our work. We're already involved in all of those areas. We've been given a pitch to play on. And that's the place where we're asked, I think, to make a difference in the areas that come to us. So our first step is to say, yes, I want to make a difference, but not by controlling what's going on or imposing my will. No, if I can surrender to that great spirit within, I can become a channel. As St. Francis said, last week was a feast of St. Francis, and we read that great prayer of his, let me be a channel of your peace. Where there's hatred, bring love. Where there's offense, bring pardon. And he goes through it, and he talks about creating space to bring peace, love, pardon, union, truth, faith, hope, your light and joy, and so on. And let's face it, that's what we want to do. That's what we want our lives to bring. And we do that out of love. We create the space around us that enables these qualities to come through. And we offer that space to people and situations in our lives. But once again, not imposing on those people, but simply by offering that space in a way that enables those around us to find their way to a place of harmony. And I think it's our presence that makes the first difference. And then, depending on the situation, it's our actions that enable those around us to find the way through to a point of harmony. And for us to do that, to know what to do, we really have to reach for that guidance within us. And that guidance isn't something that comes from our minds. It comes from the heart. The guidance comes from the heart. It's that intuitive response. When we're surrendered in an attitude of love, when we're acting without trying to control the outcome, but just offering love, I think then that spirit does come through. And it's like becoming a prophet. We speak into a situation, and a truth comes through us. And, I'm sure many of you have had that experience. I can remember once I sometimes do one-to-one work in a group, and I was with this person, and I was absolutely, whatever I said made no difference at all. I said, what about this, what about that? And they're just stony-faced. And I really didn't know what to say. And then suddenly I just had this instinct to say, it came to my mind, ask about your grandmother. So I said, what about your grandmother? Burst into tears, sobbing, completely opened up. And it was suddenly there. And it wasn't something that I thought of. It just sort of came to me. And I think, you're not quite sure where it comes from. Suddenly it comes to you, something comes into your mind, and you say something, and it sort of changes what's going on. Now, I think most of us have had that. Who's had that experience here? If you put your hand up, yeah, a few of you had that experience. Yeah, it is that sense that something's come to us. And, funny enough, that is the nature of prophecy. It is a reliance on the guidance from within. And that gift is available to us all. And Hazrat Khan says again, every inspired person reflects in his own way some hidden divine spark in his soul which can win the world. A musician may show his inspiration in music. A poet may show it in his poetry. An artist may show his inspiration in his art. But the central ray of light which prophets reflect, falling on every plane and every aspect of life, makes all clear in their sight. Therefore, the presence of the prophet clears away perplexity from the minds of those who are confused. And in her presence, a person can feel and think more clearly, even without having spoken to her. Many forget their questions before a prophet, for the light falling on their hearts brings to them an answer, and they realize the answer was in themselves. It was something they already knew. No doubt both questions and answers are in the stole, and the first step of the soul's progress raises questions, and the second step brings the answer, which is why a prophetic soul is also a physician, a scientist, an artist. A prophetic soul is capable of commerce, industry, and business, and she is qualified in warfare and competing in peacemaking and competent in peacemaking. So I think in order to create space for those around us, we become prophets in our own way. We have to draw on that inner guidance to bring out the wisdom that's needed in a situation. Now, I know the moment I say all this sort of stuff, you think, well, I'm not a prophet. What on earth are you talking about? Prophets are only found in the Bible, not in everyday life. And anyway, prophets always get into trouble. And I am not looking for trouble. Actually, the word prophet comes from the Latin word pro, which means before, in front of, in terms of time and space. Actually, that's how it means before and in front of in terms of time and space. And it also comes from the word Vesey, which means to tell. And phonics comes from the same root. It's about the word sound. So the root meaning of the word prophet is to speak into something. That's all it is, to speak into something. And the whole idea of prophets being messengers from God is just that they're speaking from divine inspiration. And that's not just for special people. We all have that divinity, that sense within us. We have it there. And it's just that people feel uncomfortable about both acknowledging it as being within them and about using it. And the reason for that is that, you seem to be setting yourself up as some sort of infallible resource, some sort of, you can't get it wrong. And the reason the whole idea of being a prophet has got a bad name is that the people who claim to be prophets claim they know what's right because God told them so, and therefore you better well get in line with what they're saying. And what they get wrong is that they're investing in the outcome of what they're saying, rather than just letting go of the outcome of their actions, not controlling those around them, and just letting that truth come through. Those prophets that want to make you do that, there's a desire to control rather than love. They invest in their own rightness. And what we're talking about here is the recognition that we have the capability to surrender to the Spirit that's within us. And when we do that, we have an opportunity to be guided in such a way to make a contribution to others. I think that makes sense. I think if there is a wisdom, that we can use that to help others. And the reason we don't do it more is that, we don't pay attention to that guidance. As Israel Khan says, we don't water that guidance. We don't cultivate it. We either ignore it, we think, well, I'm not saying that, or think that it's not our place to say something. We're unwilling to take on the mantle of healing because we think that we're not worthy to do it. And this, I think, is the great conspiracy. We're told that we're not worthy, and we believe it. What have you got? Why me? Why am I so? Why should I have the answer to this? Well, the truth is, why am I so special? The truth is we're not so special. Everyone has this gift. Everyone has access to this divine guidance. And yet, we've all convinced ourselves that it's something special reserved only for those who are most holy and most good. This is just something that the church and priests have put out to keep themselves in gainful employment and make sure that they have a special place and that you keep in line. I mean, that's what the church, that's what they do, only comes through priests, It's also put up by skeptics who think that such a level of wisdom doesn't exist unless you can prove it in a lab. So, the two areas, science and religion, are both saying you can't know this. But ask and it will be given to you. Knock and you will find. Seek and it will open. Now, I'm not talking here about something that's, confined to Christianity or Judaism. We're talking about an innate knowing that's within us all, that we often surprise ourselves by using once in a while, but the more we use it, the more it will come to us. So we first decide we want to make a positive contribution to the world. We know we can't do this from our minds, as we'll then be another person, just another person with another good idea. So we make the contribution from our hearts and we surrender to that spirit within. And this opens the door for us to become a channel for that spirit, and a part of that is being given guidance. The trick is to listen to the guidance, to pay attention, and then to act on it. But how shall I know when to act and when not to act? How do I know it's not coming from my mind? How do I know it's coming from my heart? And I go back to that question that Brendan asked a couple of weeks ago. When do we know to act? And I used this quote last week, in the Bhagavad Gita, when Arjuna asked Krishna, should I attack these people? How do I know when to act or not? And Krishna says, you have a right to your actions, but never the fruits of your actions. Act for action's sake, and do not be attached to inaction. This is how actions were done by the ancient seekers of freedom. Follow their example. Act and surrender to the fruits of action. And I think for me today, the key words here are, do not be attached to inaction. Funnily enough, that is what the world is suffering from. Although there's plenty of action going on, we're often, and most people are attached to inaction. We do not speak up when prompted within from fear of, what your fear is, why you don't speak up. Just fill in the blanks. And we don't act when prompted for the same reason. In a world where our minds give us every reason for doing whatever we like, and we're willing to listen to our minds and to act on the mind's reason, we're strangely reticent about listening to our hearts. And when we feel a prompting to do something or say something, our minds give us every reason for not following through. No, you shouldn't do that. You don't want to do that. They won't pay attention to you. Why say something silly like that? Funny that. The mind will do anything to stop the heart taking control, because it knows the heart will demand sacrifice, and it'll demand surrender. And this is often something, sacrifice and surrender, that the mind does not want to countenance. It wants to be in control. It wants to help you be in control. And yet we all know that no one is in control of anything. It's madness to think that we can really control life. All we can do is what the heart is asking us to do. And that is surrender to the higher power within us. And when we do that, like it or not, we become prophets. We speak into a situation. And I think that this is one way we can create space for some good to come into the world. Thank you, Lydia. We always give people an opportunity to respond to what's been said from the front, to either add to it, disagree with it, make a contribution, or just remain in silence with the space just being there. So does anyone want to say anything, add anything, make a contribution at all? Yeah, Ward, thank you.
I serve as an elected official, and every 2 years we have an election. We get new council members on. And whenever we've had new council members before they've taken office, I always tell them, if you have a question, ask it. If you have a comment, give it, because you may never have another opportunity to address that issue at that time.
Yeah, that's lovely. Thank you. Anybody else? Yes, Bruce.
Excuse me. I once heard a very articulate, inspirational, famous football coach. He was doing sort of a speech at some big trade thing, and he said, you know, I have to boil things down to such a simple level for my players, and they need to hear it about 10,000 times. And what his little mantra was, speaking as far as just act, do something. Yeah. It was let's see, do what's right, do your best in the kindest way now.
Yes, that's lovely. Yeah.
You know, when you try to take this all down, it's like, gee, something needs to be done. So I'm going to do what's right, because we intuitively know that as pro-social creatures. And, but do it. Be kind. Yeah.
We always have an opportunity to make a contribution if we're conscious enough to realise that contribution can be made. Yeah. Fantastic. Yes.
Just quickly on
Heather first.
Well, I was just struck by your line about that sometimes we don't lean into our heart because we know there's going to be some sacrifice, and we're not willing to take the sacrifice.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Well, and Nicholas, I really appreciated your reminder that we're all living our lives day to day, and it's our actions that we take in the moment with the people around us that make a difference.
Yes.
And I think that's really nice to remind yourself, because, you know, sometimes you think, oh, I'm supposed to do something really big, and really it's how big you live your life every day,
yes,
those around you. So thank you.
Thanks, Dan. That's absolutely right. Yeah. Brandon.
We lost our father-in-law yesterday, and it was a month-long struggle. But my mother-in-law revealed that one of her friends years ago said, you should look at your son Liam, because he's going to take care of you. And she just revealed that. Excuse me. Sort of the way it worked out, he didn't know his father was sick, so he moved home. And he's moving in with his mom. But that was revealed to her years and years ago. So we go to prophecy, and that was a friend telling her, look for your son Liam, because he's going to take care of you. So kind of struck me today. We just found out about this a few days ago. So
That's amazing. And tell me, your father-in-law died last night?
Yesterday, during the day, after
Yeah.
a little over a month struggle with fibrosis,
Right.
with pulmonary fibrosis, but yeah, that was obviously its own challenge, but
Yeah.
I think she took comfort in her son being home,
Yeah.
and sort of that prophecy being fulfilled.
That's absolutely fantastic. Thank you for sharing that, Brandon. I really appreciate that. And my condolences as well. Thank you. Anybody else like to say anything? Yeah, thank you, Brian.
Can you pass that?
Yeah, for me, there's something about the I. When the I gets involved, then all these angles come in, and all these angles of thought and doubt and questioning and when and how. It's when I'm being done through is when the magic happens.
Yeah.
Yeah, I tend to stutter and misstep when the I gets involved. So I heard you speaking to that, and just wanted to highlight that for myself. Thank you.
Thank you. And what Hazrat Khan said about, you can see it, as he was saying, you can see it in musicians when they get out of the way and suddenly something comes through. And poets, I saw Bruce Springsteen say he didn't know where his songs, Bob Dylan actually was saying, he didn't know where his songs came from. They said, well, can't you write some more now? He said, it just happens, you know. Got out of the way and suddenly there it was. So yeah, thank you. Yes, Mona.
I have no idea what I want to say, except that I sat there and I knew that if I took the microphone, something would come. And it took courage to do that.
Thank you. And you are following Krishna's advice, which is to act and not. And something has come. There's been a joy that has appeared as well.
And we all
Thank
get
you.
to hear your voice.
Yes, thank you, Mona. That's great. Bruce.
Here's a perspective I think about, which is evolutionary mismatches. So our sapient brains evolved over millions of years, but you know it's been sort of what it is for the last 100,000 years or so, they guess. And you know, if I went back 40,000 years ago and said, "Hey, what's your me-we ratio?" In other words, what's it? Is it all about you type of thing? It's like, well, no, I'm sort of stuck being part of this collective. I mean, you know, we can't do anything without one another, et cetera. We're all interdependent, and our meaning in life, our purpose is like to survive. Long-term planning is tomorrow, you know, type of thing. So you take that brain and put it into the modern world, particularly in the United States of America, where we have a foundational philosophy of individualism, Bill of Rights, et cetera. That never existed before, you know, our founding fathers invented it. And I would think back in about 1979, there was a bestseller called Looking Out for Number One, you know, and now there's Brand Me, et cetera. So when you think about who is running around in modern day society, at least in the United States, sort of trying to promote or rebalance the me-we ratio, except for faith-based organizations. And so I think your message was great. We just have to get out there and do our thing, I guess.
Yeah, let's see. Yes, Peter.
Well, I can't help not say something. Sitting next to my dear friend and one of the sages of our modern era, and my roommate of over 50 years ago, I just want to express my gratitude for being here. I spent a lot of time in Colorado many years ago on my bike riding over the mountain passes. And a lot of time has passed in between then and now. And yesterday I had the opportunity to ride my friend's e-bike up to the Maroon Bells, closer to God. And it's a time that I will remember for a long time because it's just so magnificent. But just the opportunity to be here for the weekend, spend some time with Bruce and Tracy. And Bruce had sent me information on the Aspen Chapel a couple of months ago, so I'm about to leave to head back, but I said I wanted to be here before I did, and I'm glad I am.
Thank you, Peter. Good to have you with us. Thank you. Okay. Well, thank you for that. I really appreciate that. I mean, we always say that the conversation continues, and the next sort of episode comes out of a communal conversation, which is great.